Hello folks, and welcome to my picks for the top 5 epic weapons used in Game of Thrones and their real-world counterparts. From Dothraki Aurochs to Alchemist Wildfire, I'll be looking at some pretty interesting and unique weapons that are featured in the HBO television series Game of Thrones, as well as its literary counterpart, A Song of Ice and Fire, and present some equivalent weapons that existed here on Earth during human history and just might have inspired their conception, starting with...
Number 5. Aurochs. The Auroch is a weapon typically used by the nomadic Dothraki horse lords. Although not supernatural or necessarily mythical in nature, it is nevertheless an impressive and unique weapon. In the books, the Dothraki Aurochs are quite similar to Middle Eastern curved scimitar swords, however they do look quite different on the show. The Auroch of Game of Thrones is a blade shaped like a crescent moon that is roughly 2.5 feet long with a thick handle of almost the same length. This effectively makes the Auroch half sword and half scythe. While this version of the Auroch lacks the armor-piercing ability of a normal Westerosi double-edged sword, its sweeping blade is a useful weapon for warriors on horseback to slice through the skin of their enemies, and equally gives them tremendous maneuverability of the wrists. Although not explicitly stated, the fact that the Auroch is predominantly used by the Dothraki, particularly their ruling khals, and plays an important role in their wedding ceremonies, where the bride traditionally receives an Auroch along with a whip and a bow, demonstrates its relative significance to this nomadic people. Although the Auroch is an original invention of George R. R. Martin, its overall appearance in Game of Thrones is strongly reminiscent of a few very old weapons, most notably the Khepesh of ancient Egypt. Originally, the Khepesh was called the Canaanite sickle sword, and was mostly used by barbarian tribes that lived near the civilizations of Mesopotamia. However, once these tribes began to both war as well as trade with the early Egyptians, this weapon made its official appearance in that ancient kingdom. The Egyptians were so impressed by the shape and makeup of the sword that they decided to adopt it themselves. Just like the Auroch is symbolically important to the Dothraki, the Khepesh has come to be identified with the Egyptian kingdom of antiquity, and was in use from roughly 3000 to 1000 BC. Although sizable, the Khepesh was typically only around 2 feet in length, making it a good half-foot smaller than the Dothraki Auroch. It also came to symbolize royal power and strength in Egypt, as pharaohs were often depicted with a Khepesh, and many have been found in royal graves. Much like the Auroch, the Khepesh could be used to slice and thrust into the faces of enemies, making it a pretty nasty weapon. The Auroch and Khepesh are number 5 on this list, since although they are both awesome and intriguing weapons, they aren't as overpowered or legendary as the other items on this list. Number 4. The Unsullied.
Yes, I realize the Unsullied are more of an armed fighting unit than actual material weapons, but just hear me out on this one.
The capacity of Unsullied soldiers to function as one and fight fearlessly and obey without question makes them almost more akin to a single epic weapon than any army of men. Ex-men. Well, you get the picture. Trained from a very young age in the slaver city of Astapor, these boys-turned-eunuchs are taught unquestionable obedience and martial prowess, and are often used as guards all over the free cities of Essos. That said, if you think the Dothraki with their Aurochs are quite unbeatable and epic badasses, then let me tell you about the Battle of Qohor. During this event, 3,000 Unsullied held back a Dothraki Khalasar of some 25,000 screamers. After killing well over 12,000 Dothraki, 600 or so Unsullied survived to witness their surviving enemies ride in before them and throw down their cut braids in defeat. This is why you don't want to mess with these guys. Now, the military tactics of the Unsullied makes them quite similar to a few historical armies, actually. Uniformed in plain quilted tunics, they fight in formation as light infantry, equipped with short spears, swords, round shields, and distinctive spike caps. Unsullied do not ride horses, but their elite and highly specialized training makes them particularly effective in their phalanx formation. Now, if the description of the Battle of Qohor reminds you somewhat of the famous Battle of Thermopylae, featured of course in the fantasy war film 300, then you are well on the right track to understanding their real-life influence for the Unsullied, as they do bear similarities to both Greek hoplites and Roman legionaries. As well as possessing the right equipment, the Unsullied are highly disciplined and trained like a Roman legionary. In the books, the Unsullied are also said to build field fortifications or entrenchments while on the march, something the Roman army was well known for. They are, however, strongest in their phalanx formation with spears and shields, just like the Greek hoplites, really making them a combination of Praetorian Roman cohorts and Spartan hoplites. Yes, just like in 300.
But just one second, Charlie. Roman and Greek soldiers weren't eunuchs, so what's that all about? Well, folks, It's a good question, and fortunately, I did some digging and found one concrete and interesting example in our human history where eunuchs were used as soldiers.
After reading through a thread on Reddit, I came upon one historical instance, backed by credible scholarship, where eunuchs were used as soldiers in 16th century China. Following the success of a eunuch general named Zhang Yong in putting down a rebellion, the ruling Ming dynasty emperor Zhang De selected from among his castrated servants who served at his court good riders and skilled shooters to organize them in an exclusive eunuch battalion in 1508. This act was seen as both bizarre and controversial at the time, but gradually eunuch soldiers became an active part of the Chinese emperor's inner court guards, where in 1552 it became necessary to construct a facility to house and train eunuch soldiers on a more regular and professional basis within the Forbidden City. Although the story of the eunuch soldiers in China is a detailed and complex one, they appear to have been primarily tasked with protecting and obeying the emperor directly, given that most served within the imperial palace in a similar way that the Unsullied acted as guards to their wealthy owners in Slaver's Bay. Usage of these eunuch soldiers appear to have ended with the collapse of the Ming dynasty in 1644.
So basically, Roman guards plus Spartan hoplites plus Chinese eunuch soldiers equals Unsullied. Cool, right? Okay, let's move on to something a little bit more magical in nature now.
Number 3. Dragonglass Daggers, or Obsidian. If you are a show watcher of Game of Thrones, Dragonglass makes its first appearance in Season 2 when Sam discovers a cache of the old artifacts buried in the snow on the Fist of the First Men. Later on, Sam is able to actually kill a White Walker with the material, whereas regular metal weapons are easily shattered. So, what's the deal with this stuff? In fact, Dragonglass is merely volcanic glass known as obsidian. In the universe of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, the Children of the Forest made weapons out of dragonglass, including daggers, blades, and arrowheads. Supposedly, during the earlier years of Westerosi history, the Children of the Forest gave the men of the Night's Watch 100 obsidian daggers or so every year, presumably to protect themselves from the White Walkers, or others, as they are called in the books. Though the small folk claim that the dragonglass is made by dragons, the educated maesters rightly say that it comes from fires of the earth. Given that obsidian is not only able to kill White Walkers, the Valyrians of old, who called obsidian frozen fire, used to make glass candles out of this material that apparently allowed sorcerers to see across mountains, seas, and deserts, and gave men visions and dreams as well as communicate with one another, half a world apart. So, how does this magical artifact exist in the real world? Well, as the maesters state, obsidian is a naturally occurring volcanic glass produced when volcanic lava cools rapidly with minimum crystal growth. However, as far as we know, there is nothing overtly magical about it. Nevertheless, its usage in our timeline is quite similar to that of Westeros, where the use of obsidian seems to have been valued in many Stone Age cultures because, like flint, it could be fractured to produce sharp blades or arrowheads, mirroring its use by the Children of the Forest as a weapon. Though mostly used by truly ancient cultures, obsidian was more recently used by pre-Columbian Mesoamericans who went so far as to make a type of sword with obsidian blades mounted in a wooden body called macuahuitl. Though obsidian is more delicate than metal weapons, the blades can be even sharper than the highest quality steel razor blade, thus making it a truly deadly weapon in our world. In spite of the missing magical element that it possesses in both Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, in our world, this beautiful, dark, shining volcanic glass can be found and purchased from a wide range of sources. Number 2. Wildfire. Wildfire, as witnessed at the end of the second season of Game of Thrones, is a truly dangerous yet beautiful weapon. In A Song of Ice and Fire, wildfire is described as a volatile liquid that burns for a long time. Created by the Alchemist's Guild at King's Landing, its true properties are unknown and is one of the most guarded secrets of the alchemists. Once the liquid catches fire, the substance will burn until it is no more, seeping into most materials, even burning when floating on water. Because of this, wildfire is typically commissioned for use as a weapon of war, but can sometimes be used as a display of power. Wildfire is dangerous as it is fickle, since any slight spark can set it off, just as too much sun can cause the substance to ignite. This is why the most volatile jars of wildfire must be transported from place to place by night and in a cart filled with sand that is sealed in wax, and then placed in a room pumped full of water. Now that's a WMD in Westeros. So, what in our history, you might wonder, could possibly match something as terrifying as wildfire? Well, a similar substance is said to have existed on Earth at one time, and it was known as Greek fire. This weapon was developed by the Greek Empire of the Byzantines around 672 AD, and used primarily in naval battles to a great effect. Just like wildfire, Greek fire would continue to burn while floating on water. Because of this, it not only guaranteed the Byzantines numerous military victories, but saved their capital city of Constantinople from 2 Arab sieges, just as wildfire helped save King's Landing from Stannis' naval assault on the city in Season and Book 2 of the series. Yet another way in which Greek fire is similar to wildfire is that it was also a closely guarded state secret, its properties remaining a matter of speculation and debate to this very day. However, it appears that the liquid was not a green substance, nor did it burn green when lit, making wildfire a rather unique substance in Game of Thrones. And now, last but not least on this list, number 1, Valyrian steel. Valyrian blades are truly the weapons of champions in Game of Thrones. Manufactured in the Valyrian freehold with dragonfire, Valyrian steel blades are lighter, stronger, and sharper than the castle-forged steel. On top of this, these blades are able to keep their edge forever, making them timeless, and also helps explain why so many notable houses of Westeros keep these blades as treasured heirlooms. After the fall of Valyria, it appears that this blade became considerably more costly than it already was, when the secrets of its making were lost in the Doom. During the present events of the series, there are only a few select weaponsmiths capable of reforging the existing Valyrian blades, namely a few blacksmiths of Qohor, a city in Essos. Added to the distinctive rippling patterns on Valyrian blades, it seems they are also capable of killing White Walkers just like dragonglass daggers, rendering them somewhat magical in nature. So, what on earth could truly match the epicness of Valyrian steel here on Earth? Well, my friends, there was such a weapon that existed, and it apparently bore quite a few similarities to Valyrian steel. It was called Damascus steel. Just as the Valyrian blades are described in the books, Damascus steel blades are characterized by distinctive patterns reminiscent of flowing water. Used in India and the Middle East, the original method of producing Damascus steel, much like Greek fire, has been lost to history. It was possibly named Damascus steel either as a result of the sword being made and or sold in the city of Damascus directly, or could refer to the fact that the patterns and ripples of the sword resemble those of damask fabrics. Furthermore, in spite of some contemporary claims of having rediscovered the methods by which these original blades were produced, modern attempts to duplicate the metal have not been entirely successful. The reputation and history of Damascus steel has given rise to many legends, such as the ability to cut through a rifle barrel or to cut a hair falling across the blade. The demise of Damascus steel is, however, quite different than that of the Valyrians. It seems that the production of these swords gradually declined, and it was some combination of a breakdown in trade routes to supply that required metals, suppression of the industry in India by the British, and a general loss of the technique to produce the metal, helping bring about its demise, which ultimately ended the creation of Damascus steel in around 1750.
So those were my choices for the top 5 epic Game of Thrones weapons that have similar counterparts in our world. Do you agree or disagree with my choices? If so, leave a comment in the section below, or tell me what your favorite weapon is in Game of Thrones, or even here on Earth. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button itself, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all very, very soon. Peace out.